Yeah.
Alright, cool. That should be us live now. Um, Today's debate is about
All right.
altruism versus, the objectivist ethics, selfishness, rational selfishness. So, basically, I'm just gonna give like a rundown of sort of my view of altruism and why I have a problem with it. So it's like Onkar Ghate has a good lecture on this, which I don't know if I sent that to you at some point. I might have. Where it's basically he gives the example of Sonia Sotomayor, who is a Supreme Court justice in the U.S. She had a book on morality where it was like targeted at children. So this is like supposed to be like the plumb line conventional morality view. Because these justices, they have their own disagreements, but this is supposed to be uncontroversial, right? This is just what everybody thinks morality is. So it's describing this little girl that says she lived a life of service, and that she must find a way to serve my neighbors and my country. And it gives an example where she picked out her favorite shirt from her clothes drawer because she knew someone would love it more. And she's inspired by people who act unselfishly. And each time you do, you become a part of something bigger than yourself. Now, let's just kind of sort of break down the problems there. Um, so why is it that it's your favorite shirt, right? It's not just any old shirt. And why is it that when you're giving up your favorite shirt to the other person, why aren't they selfish for keeping it? If I'm selfish for keeping my favorite shirt, why isn't the other person selfish for taking it in? And it's not like you say this to an altruist and they're just like, well, oh my god, you've got us in a inconsistency here. I guess we're gonna throw away this whole altruism thing. It's worse than that, and they have an answer to this, and the answer is that if you did achieve or produce or earn a value, such as the shirt, you should give it up, and if you didn't achieve it, then you're owed it, right? So it's basically an attack on producers. Ayn Rand describes it as a war on producers. It is designed to bleed life from the living, and therefore it has to result in destruction to whatever extent it is practiced. Because we don't just have values automatically in this world; we have to actually work to act to achieve these values. And this is summed up perfectly in the Marxian phrase: "From each according to his ability, to each according to his need." It's those who didn't produce values who are owed them from those who produced them.
All right. So is this where I go in to like provide my own
Yeah,
perspective on
yeah,
that sort of thing?
you can give your perspective.
Okay. So essentially, I feel like uh there needs to be like a proper understanding of like what can be claimed to be selfish and what can be claimed to be altruistic. Because my perspective of altruistic is basically my understanding of the word would lead it to be understood in a way that like pertains as like a common interest to man to be altruistic. And so actually, you know what? I better bring up my notepad because it's gonna get messy
Sure.
if I don't I'm getting distracted. But I'm getting DMs. Getting DMs. Oh yeah. So one of my friends is asking to see the debate live. So I'm just gonna send it to this person real quick. There we go. Okay, so basically what it pertains to is like what I have two bold statements. So, basically, I would say altruism is like a common thing that man strives for the purposes of his own happiness. Like self-love is like an intrinsic part of being able to provide love for others essentially. And so I think like basically if we were to like make a distinction between selfishness and altruism in general, we would have to like we would have to assume that like that like not all human acts are, you know, that not all human acts are selfish. Like we don't act intrinsically for selfishness if we were to ever make that distinction to begin with, because like we all do things because we're not, because we have the, basically we all do things because we have the expectation that it will result in a satisfactory state of affairs, rather than absolutely knowing for sure that it will result in an absolutely satisfactory state of affairs. So, yeah.
Well,
I think that's. I feel like if I hear more from you, I feel like I'd be able to explain it better.
sure. So it sounds kind of like just what you were saying at the end there sounds kind of like an Austrian sort of thing. Like, if you're acting for some end, that means that you must think that that end is better than the alternative, right? And I would completely agree with
I
that.
gotta let my dog in. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Oh, nah, we're good. We're good. I thought my dog was out. Okay.
I know.
So yeah, it is definitely a phrasing that I've like obtained from Austrian literature.
Sure.
But yeah.
But I suppose I don't think that that is necessarily selfish, because you might think like that a satisfactory state of affairs is when you give up, you sacrifice your own well-being for the well-being of others. You might think that that is satisfactory, and that is, for the economist, that you are definitely acting to what you value, but what you value isn't necessarily the proper value, right? You might be thinking that giving up values to others is satisfactory, but you'd be wrong there, I would say, because I suppose that what this links into is that just having a whim, just wanting to do something, just wanting to pursue something, does not necessarily make that a value. It doesn't make it such that you should be pursuing it, because whims aren't a proper source of truth.
Yeah. So basically, my postulate is that whims is that basically every action to some degree is both rational and sort of on a whim. So, like, I mean, like it's reasonable to assume, because I see it's heavily based on our senses. I don't want to give too much of a abstract example of that, but like, so basically what I would say is, even if it's like not necessarily like basically everything, it's like going back to what I was saying before about like how I would say that like most of our like value, how our values are like on certain goods, like don't necessarily have that much ties to its chemical construction, but rather what future ends we seek in like certain items. So like it's basically you abstract like the end you actually obtain from that object, even though it's not fully guaranteed that you will. So I would think that I would say like humans in general see like friendship and kindness as like general things that like result in more satisfactory states of affairs, like more so in the distant future. It's sort of like basically what I think altruism is. It's like it requires a low time preference, essentially, right? Because I mean, like for example, like why do we spread ideas to begin with? especially when it comes to philosophy. We want to spread the right ideas um, because we want to see some kind of improvement in like society or people's values, and we want to we do that, and we construct these arguments so we incentivize others. So essentially, what I'm basically saying is that like teaching like anarcho-capitalism and like spreading the word is in of itself like altruistic, even though you're not giving up any physical good per se, any scarce resources. You could also, but actually you kind of are giving up scarce resources because you're giving up time that you would have otherwise spent on other things, basically. But instead, you're choosing to spread like important economic reasoning for the purpose, so people are more conscientious of like many of the problems that we have today.
Well, I think this analysis seems to be more based in economics than in moral theory. Like with time preferences, time preference is just about how much you value present satisfaction over future satisfaction. But it's not saying about what satisfactions should you be even going for in the first place. That's sort of like an antecedent question, right?
Yeah. I'm just like sort of explaining it in like with economic terms, just because of the like the videos that I've seen from you. It just, I suppose it gives me like the inclination to center around that sort of terminology. But I think like in order to make like a distinction between like altruism and selfishness, one would have to take into consideration like what do you think that like humans have a tendency, like just more in generally, to pursue certain ends over others? Like basically what I'm saying is like animals are altruistic for the purposes of survival, but humans are altruistic for the purposes of happiness instead. Those are like my main two bold statements of argument. That's like, because in order for us to reproduce, like basically we've constructed these like traditions of like of man and woman, and so it's like they seem like irrational. It seems like an irrational proposition if we're looking at from like an economic point of view, because it's like what goods are those producing for society? But then you look at it, you just take like the nature of sentiment as like more so of a common human good, basically. So,
I suppose I would disagree with both of your bold statements there. I don't think animals are ever altruistic, because I think altruism only exists on the conceptual level. So I suppose if we take the example of a plant is going to automatically take in whatever nutrients it needs from the soil and automatically grow towards the sun and stuff like that. So it's automatically pursuing those things which are beneficial to its own life, to its own survival, right? And then there are slightly higher animals who are maybe like just on the sensational or perceptual level, who are maybe able to, they have the immediate sensations of like pleasure and pain, but they don't go beyond that into concepts. So they will be automatically like on instinct, you could say, hunting for their food or whatever. But humans are different, because humans are volitional, because humans have a choice due to their rational capacity, right? That means that we aren't automatically pursuing the values that we aren't automatically pursuing the proper values, I'll say. So basically, like what altruism is doing, like in ethics, there are like fundamental questions which altruism and in fact like Stirnerism and Nietzscheism conflate. They have a package deal there. So the initial question is, what are values? Because we know from metaphysics that man doesn't epistemology, that man isn't automatically pursuing his values. So what are the values for man? And then the second one they lump in with this is who should be the beneficiary of those values. So they substitute the second for the first. To the altruist, the good is what is good for others, which is circular. It makes reference only to the beneficiary.
No,
We still don't know what a value is in the first place.
yeah. So basically, what I would say is, yeah, no, I don't think, like, I suppose in that regard, I view altruism from a different light. Like, the values are are only subjective because our perception of any objective values is just purely like it's impossible to know. So we use subjectivity for the purposes of getting closer to objectivity in a way. Because so basically, I would say my perception of selfishness, like just the fact that it's a term that's used in a negative way, then I feel that its purpose to use it for the like. How do I want to explain this? I'm just gonna look through like various subjects that I went through. I was gonna write down your question, like your points, but I forgot. Well, basically, I see altruism as like both like the necessity to survive, but also like is a common thing that humans work for the purposes of happiness. Like it's the reason why we don't often pursue like Crusoe lifestyles. We don't, because we find it not productive in a way. So like it's like why people cooperate even though they're not exchanging like any tangible goods. Like you could see you could see altruism as like exchanging like more so of like emotional quote unquote goods in a way, because or at least like you'll at least feel like you've done the right thing, even if it leaves like some kind of pain. You know, you find that doing something that's altruistic like is for the benefit of you, and it kind of, and like that's why humans tend to go towards it as like sort of like it's kind of like tied into survival instincts, because humans like have like sort of converted like things that would normally be done for the sake of survival for, but because of our intellect, we over animals, we prefer that it makes us happy and not just live for the sake of running our cycles.
Was my confusion here is like I don't actually know what altruism is or what it's saying on your view. So it's like you've described altruism as like, well, it's necessary for survival and it's a common thing that humans work for. Like those are describing altruism, but what is it? So like I suppose to make this clear, it'd be like if you asked me what selfishness is, and I would say, well, selfishness is necessary to your survival, but it's also something you need to choose. Versus me saying selfishness is acting in pursuit of your own life as an end in itself, right? Like that's sort of what I'm looking for.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So basically, what I would say is I see selfishness as like actively working against what's actually good for you because you're focused on the wrong goods that you think are beneficial to you. That's what I'm saying by selfishness. Like because self-love is actually can be seen as like a preliminary to altruism, especially if you're conditioned, if this said self-love is for like the purposes of, you know, sharing love to those you feel like you need to do something for. And so and so like, yeah, that's why like I see altruism like within like the very concept of like friendship, you know, charity, you know, relationships, and, you know, tending to your family, even if you have like problems with any of those specific people, you see, you know, you basically, we're all speculative creatures at the end of the day. Even when it comes to like the things we know the most, we're still like speculating on what comes out of those most known things, including people and including like objects and whatnot.
Well, I think this is just like an incoherent view of selfishness. Like it's selfishness. It's self. It's not self-sacrifice. It's pursuit of the self, not pursuit of others. So it's seeking its self-interest, you could say. I mean, like there are like, you know, dictionary definitions are often infected with this altruism virus. But, you know, like if I'm just looking at the DuckDuckGo definition here, and it lists self-love as a synonym for selfishness. Like I would agree with that. But also like just I'm not sure, maybe I just didn't pick up on it, but like I just want, like, you know, what actually is altruism on your view? Like, you know, we can talk about
Oh
what it
yeah,
means, like, you know, what it would, you know, lead to and stuff like that. But like, what is it?
I would say that it's something that like we inherently go for because everything we do is for the purposes of receiving something in return. Like, so people say selflessness is about like doing stuff without expecting anything in return, but I see that as like impossible, and it's just really working as a metaphor to inspire people to be selfless because of how like amazing it seems. But at the end of the day, like it's impossible to do any rational thing without doing it in your own self-interest. So it doesn't make any sense to apply everything as selfish if everything you do is in your own self-interest. So basically what I'm saying is like what can only be categorized as selfish is basically anything that is not altruistic.
Well, I would disagree that it's impossible to do anything without it being in your own self-interest, because you can act
Well,
for the interests of others, right? With
yeah,
disregarding your own self-interest.
yeah, but it's like, but so I don't, I, but see, I think this is where we ultimately clash. Wait, that was a bad way to symbolize that hand gesture, um, but basically, I wish I could draw a chart because it like, yeah,
As soon as you
it's
could, like,
just
you
if
could
we're
send it into
gonna,
like the text chat or something.
yeah. So, but
Or share your
we,
screen.
in order to, yeah, oh yeah, I'm just I'm just not I just wasn't sure if anyone has done that before, so that's why I wasn't thinking that that was like a viable option. Uh,
Yeah, it's like along the bottom with like the mic and stuff. It looks like, yeah, like next to turn on
let's
camera.
see. Yeah, let's see.
Yeah, I can see that.
I actually don't know I actually don't know how I would construct this, but like basically, um, so so like basically, in human action, um, they basically say that we all do things because we believe we expect them to have a higher set, be in a more satisfactory state of affairs. And upon that principle, that means that like anything that you do is in your own self interest to some extent. Like basically anything you do is like impossible to like you can like it's basically like it's basically rejecting one self interest in purpose of another is basically like say for example you just wanted to like see this is me what I'm about to say, but like imagine uh you're just in your room and you don't want to go anywhere, and you'd rather just stay in your room all day and do nothing. You find that you would be happy doing that, but you know, you get like a call from your friend or something and asking if if you want to hang out with them, and you don't want to get up and go hang out with them, but you see value in your relationship with that person because they're a generally nice person. And so it's like referring to past like experience you've had like with people, and building relationship. And so I see what I'm basically saying is like all human like like both personal and interpersonal business relationships, like both of those things are like stem from a level of altruism, but mainly personal. But there can be like a level of interpersonal business relations where there's a level of like going the extra mile that goes beyond just the basic exchange you know
Well, I mean, you said there that something along the lines of because you're pursuing a more satisfactory state of affairs, this means that everything is in your self-interest. Well, let's just like unpack that for a second. Like, what is really meant by acting in the Austrian sense? It's not that you are pursuing what is in fact more satisfactory. It's what you believe to be more satisfactory. It's what you think is better.
Exactly.
Right. But that is, if that's what self-interest means, that means, or if on this view, everything you pursue is in your self-interest, that would assume that what is in your self-interest, those values, those things which are good for your life, are not determined by your actual nature. They are rather determined by whatever you want. This is assuming that whim is the correct epistemology. Just refer to whatever you feel like, and whim worship, right? But I completely disagree with this. I think what is in your self-interest is objective, because you have to have life. Basically, the derivation for this is that the concept of value only comes up in the moral sense if you have the concept of life. Because, like, to ask the question of what is good presupposes that there is some living human who's capable of deliberately acting and seeking out the good. So to assert any sort of death ethic is to steal the concept of value. Value only exists if life is taken for granted, and then they're trying to attack life. So they have to accept that life is the standard, whilst trying to reject it. This is, Ayn Rand says it's worse than a contradiction, because the concept of value only comes after the concept of life. You can't have value on its own. You couldn't discover the concept of value without first understanding what life is. So that's like that's the basic way that you discover objective values. You take the value and you compare it to the objective end in itself of life. So it's not so there are objective values. It's not just whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think there absolutely are. There absolutely are objective values, but it's basically something that we cannot, that no human being can fully comprehend. So that's why. So that's why, like, so actually, you know what? I think I want to hear what your definition of selfishness is. Did you already go over that, and I'm just like not remembering?
I might have done, I don't know, but I'll just restate it. So,
Okay.
um, selfishness is basically, let's see, I think I've got it written down here. Yeah, so selfishness is acting in pursuit of your own life as an end to itself. So it's taking your life as the standard of value rather than anything else, right? It's not taking duty as the standard of value. It's not taking the greatest happiness for the standard of value. It's not taking what God wants as the standard of value. It's taking your own life as the standard of value. That's selfishness.
Taking your own life as the standard of value. See, um, see, what's funny about that is I actually think altruism follows that line more, because just like considering like how humans live at all is through, taking sacrifices and allowing us to be more prospective of like what we know, like just like not we so like I mean, what's the point in like, getting married and like doing all of these things that have like helped us live throughout the years? What I'm basically saying is, I feel like um, objectivism like overestimates the intellectual discrepancy between man and animal, basically. Um, like there's a clear distinction, undoubtedly. Like I think it's fully advantageous to say that man has free will and animal does not. But what I think it fails to do is recognize that we never really know what is in our self-interest. And so we relay information between other people to try and figure out what would satisfy ourselves at the end of the day. And naturally, as human beings, it's, yeah.
So, like, you asked there, like, on the objectivist view, what is the point of getting married and do all these things, like division of labor and whatnot, friendships that have helped us live throughout the ages? Well, the clue is in there. It's that they helped us live.
Yeah.
Right. So if life is the standard of value,
yeah,
that's why you should do it, right? Because it helps you live. It helps you live a better life. If I know for a fact I would like to marry and have children, because I think that will be a better life for me. I would like that more. It's not because I think I should sacrifice my own happiness or others, and I think I have a duty to get married because of cultural norms or whatever. I think it would be good for me. I would like that. So that's why, because it's helping you live. Life is the standard.
I think I'm starting to see like where we actually differ. I think this sort of talk is like helping me to understand more. I think at the end of the day, we're just gonna have like a disagreement on what like sacrifice and all. Like I've seen like the word sacrifice be used in like a positive way, and like I'm pretty sure. Well, I know it's been used in like a positive way in like Hoppe, at least one of Hoppe's books, and I think also in one of Rothbard's books. But basically, it's like it's basically boils down to how you look at altruism. Like if it's like it's just like Hmm. It's not about sacrificing something just because and you don't and you believe that it's just going to ruin your it's like against your values. It's not Altruism isn't about going against your values. Um but rather it's something that tends towards like man's values he doesn't really know about, but that he feels that it's like a natural sort of compelling that man has for like it's like entirely metaphorical when people say stuff like oh you're gonna give up this so that other people can be happy and so that you will just be unhappy and in a less satisfactory state when really it's like well selfishness on the other hand it's like what I see it is like just keeping the goods you have now because you're satisfied with goods and you you don't care about your future self. So it's like in order to be altruistic, it's like partly about not just caring about the people around you in the present, but it's also about caring about yourself in the future and like how your image is like so yeah basically what I'm saying is you could basically like from the definition you have of selfishness I could like if I were to use that definition I would say altruism is selfish by your definition basically but
I suppose
yeah.
at this point then it's a terminological thing. I suppose what I can do here, and there are other things I've got noted down once we get past this terminological thing that I could we could talk about. But like
it sounds ridiculous. I'm sorry.
Sorry. Yeah. So I just kind of want to go into like the history of philosophy a little bit here. So like where does Ayn Rand get this idea that altruism is about self-sacrifice? Because I think your understanding of altruism is wrong. I think it does not reflect how the term is used in the history of philosophy. So primarily, altruism comes from religion. It's sacrifice for God. So Abraham is the example that Onkar brings up. So he's a biblical hero because he was willing to give up his favorite son in order to serve God, right? And it's because he was willing to give up his favorite son in order to serve God. But why does God need Abraham's sacrifice? Well, the answer is he doesn't. God can do anything. Sacrifice accomplishes nothing, right? It's not sacrificing because it will get you something greater. It doesn't achieve anything. All it's doing is it puts people on their knees. It's sacrifice for the sake of sacrifice. And, in modern times, we have basically the fall of Christianity in philosophy, and we get some secular replacements for God. People just substitute in their own thing for God. So the Kantians, they place in duty for God. So it's sacrifice for duty. Then the utilitarians, it's sacrifice for the greatest happiness. And there's a poem called Charge of the Light Brigade by Lord Tennyson. So it says, theirs is not to make reply, theirs not to reason why, theirs but to do and die. So you're not to make any reply when God says to sacrifice your son and ask what it accomplishes, to reason why. Your place is simply to serve. You are just a cog. You're a cog in this greater, collectivist body. You are a cell in the society body, right? This is how altruism is in the history of philosophy. It's about renunciating your own pleasure for the pleasure of others. And this is like why I brought up Nietzscheans and Stirnerites earlier, because they fundamentally agree with the altruists on a fundamental point. So I mentioned this earlier, that altruism is a package deal. It lumps in the question of what are values with who should be the beneficiary of values. These like Stirnerite, you could call them irrational egoists, I suppose. They're just taking the opposite side of the coin. So the altruists are saying what is good is what is anything so long as the intended beneficiary is other people. These irrational egoists are saying A is good if the intended beneficiary is yourself. If it's just the intent, if you are just the intended beneficiary, not if you'll actually benefit from it, but just if you intend to benefit from it, then it's a good thing and you should pursue it, right? So these two schools, they fundamentally are just two sides of the same coin. And this is kind of the battle in terms of altruism that's been going out throughout the history of philosophy.
Yeah. So I actually have a way to break down that. So basically, with the story of Moses, it's really a symbolic sort of thing. Like because he loves, like, we just have to kind of scale that sort of story down. So let's say, for example, like, I don't know, you have like a son or daughter who you love very much. It's basically, he loved God so much that he was willing to do anything for the favor of him. So you have a son, so let's say you have a son or daughter, and you're about to eat your favorite, whatever, but they seem to want it more, and so you sacrifice your own enjoyment for it. And because you see okay, I actually thought of this. Okay, so basically, Abraham valued the satisfaction of God more than not, basically. So I know that's like viewing it from like an economics point of view, but it's like, what really constitutes an action that's selfish as opposed to altruistic? Can there really even be true sacrifice if sacrifice means always acting against your own self-interest? Because to even act presupposes like a level of self-interest, basically.
Right, and so these people are inconsistent to that degree, right? If they were truly and completely, they completely hated themselves and they completely thought that they were unworthy of life, then, they would make as opposite, right? But because they're inconsistent, that doesn't mean that this understanding of altruism is suddenly incorrect, because most people are inconsistent, right? They're saying you should give up your own satisfaction to others. You should give up what is good for you, because you produced it, therefore you don't deserve it. So, you said there that Abraham valued the satisfaction of God more than not, right? But like he's I suppose, in these, a lot of the way you can conceive of these early Christians, because they had like the early Christian metaphysics. They thought that God is basically a sub-in for nature. God is like the laws of nature. So he's wanting to win the favor of the laws of nature, but not because he thinks that, so that means God's going to give me a great harvest next year. I'm going to appease the laws of nature. It's not like, the Aztec priests sacrificing people because they think it'll bring the rains or whatever. He's just sacrificing because God said so. Because he had this mystic insight, God told him sacrifice. And he's like, okay, I shall submit. And he's supposed to be a hero because he submits. Because he just takes it unquestioningly, without thinking that it's going to benefit him in the long run or anything. Because if he's doing it to benefit himself in the long run, then he's awful. He's a selfish bastard, right? But he's supposed to be, he's like the ultimate ideal of a altruist.
Yeah. So that's actually, so I'm glad you mentioned that, because it like actually lines up to what I'm gonna say. So basically, those stories are like, so basically, I think that there's something that needs to be established, and it's not that. So how'd the quote go, or whatever? Was it like society is like run by ideas or something? Is that like how it meant?
Sure.
Or, well, it's like, Well, what society's actually run by is incentives, not ideas. So basically, those stories, um, seeing basically by your definition of altruism, what it leads me to conclude is that your version of altruism just simply can't exist because if all actions are in self-interest, then how could there be an altruistic action at all? Like at least in its entirety. Um, it's really just I really see the story of sacrifice as just sort of a metaphor, like to incentivize people to get to like pursue greater goods, basically, by basically doing what is best for mankind, basically, rather than just giving up for the sake of giving up. It's really just like it's like how would I describe it? So like for example, like when someone's holding up like something like or like if someone's like practicing to like fight or something, and the trainer is holding up their hand, they won't say they'll tell you not to aim for the hand but aim for the wall. And that's sort of like so like it's like they teach you to overcompensate that, and that's sort of like the intention behind like Christian doctrine in general, is like they intentionally do metaphors and more symbolic ways to incentivize people who wouldn't understand it otherwise. And so that's actually why the that's why the bell curve meme exists, right? Because it's like understanding. It's like the people who are lower on the IQ scale are like falling, are like following faith, following by their own faith, because they see something more agreeable with those of a high IQ than those with the bell curve IQ. Basically, it's like an innate sense, even for like it's yeah. I remember seeing like a video that basically explained why, I think I've explained enough on that in that regard.
Sure. So you said there at the beginning there that my version of altruism just can't exist because everything you're doing, you think that it's in your self-interest. So you're always pursuing what you think is in your self-interest. But what this is assuming is that what you think is in your self-interest is actually, in fact, in your self-interest, which I completely disagree with. I think there are objective values. You can produce certain values, and I think it's not in your self-interest to produce those values in order to give them up, because you think that others deserve what they didn't produce, and those who produce don't deserve what they produced. I think that is fundamentally evil. And you also mentioned there, in response to my Abraham story, that doing the best for mankind is not giving up for giving up's sake. And I would agree that there. But it is evil. It's utilitarian. It's collectivist. You are subbing in the sort of early, you're secularizing this early view, where you're just giving up for whatever. It doesn't even matter. This is kind of closer to the Kantian view, where you're giving up for duty, right? But then these utilitarians, they come in, they're more secular, they're more scientific men. So you're giving up for society because society matters more than you. Well, why does society matter more than you? Why is it that society is more important than you? And what does it mean to be good for society, right? What is the good for society? It fails to answer the question of what the good is, first off. So it's stealing the concept, right? It doesn't answer this. We don't even know what the good is. It's just saying it's good if it's intended to benefit others. That's clearly just still whim worship, right? It's nonsensical. It clearly can't be a rational code of ethics. But we can get a rational code of ethics on the objectivist view.
Yeah. So I think I'm starting to understand like what I actually have with the problem of objectivism in general, and it's primarily centered around its epistemology, basically. And so what it basically leaves out is that we can only speculate what our interests actually are. And so that's why, like, by nature, we relay a lot of information, like, between human beings, just to simply understand, like, how things, to understand what actually is in our interests. It's like, basically, I'm just trying to think. I'm not really sure if I want to go down to the discussion of tabula rasa or anything like that, because I feel like I don't know enough about that. The only thing I know about tabula rasa is that I disagree with the having to be born part before receiving knowledge. But I'm digressing a bit with that statement. So basically, so what I see wrong with the epistemology of objectivism is that it overestimates how certain a person actually knows a certain thing. Rather, like, it has a presupposition that humans actually know what they're self-interested in, and that we're not always just testing. We're like always testing the waters, is basically my proposition, in order to find out what is most reasonable to do next. So, and that's why, yeah.
Okay, so
that's why people don't. Yeah.
Sorry. So, like,
you go on.
You said your problem with this view is the epistemology, right? It's because you're saying we can only ever speculate what our interests actually are. Well, I would say no. You can study, you can investigate. You know, you can say, hey, there is this guy who's a doctor. He's studied poisons his whole life, and he tells me arsenic is harmful. It causes harm, and he can explain to me exactly why it causes harm. It does these certain things to my body, and it will kill me if I ingest it, right? So, but then it's like, well, how do you know that he's, trustworthy? How maybe I investigated myself and I determined, yep, arsenic is trustworthy. Well, how do you know that you didn't make any mistakes in your investigation there? What this basically comes down to is Cartesian doubt, from Descartes, right? That's where Cartesian comes from. So his method of doing philosophy was to doubt everything, because this was like basically what it was at the time. This is because at the time it was like, oh, well, if we can't take any of these Christian things for granted, if we can't, how do we know we can take anything for granted? Because all the skeptics keep throwing all these problems our way. So he just started with doubting everything. Okay, do I know that do I know that my table exists? Well, I see it, but what if my sight isn't trustworthy? Okay, so I've got to doubt that. Okay, and he goes to this whole line, doubt, until he gets down to, I know that I think, I have to think, therefore I must exist, right? Which, by the way, he can't even get on his own view, because he has to also doubt the law of non-contradiction. So it could, on his view, he has to also doubt that he even exists. And the later Cartesians would indeed throw out, I think, therefore I am. They'd throw out his cogito. So what is the error in this method of just doubting everything on its face? Because you could be wrong, right? It's like, if you have some argument, well, how do you know you didn't make some error there? Well, this is basically, it's placing the burden of proof in the wrong position. Having this as a view makes you epistemically paralyzed. You can do nothing on this view, because you have to doubt literally everything. And the reason is, as I said, it's placing the burden of proof in the wrong position. It is not on the person who is making some argument to prove that they made no error there. Why is this, right? The reason is because you can't point to something which doesn't exist, right? If you don't think there exists something, you can't point to a non-error, you can't point to a non-dog, you can't point to non-existence. So if I've made an argument, it's like, well, you could have made an error. Well, where's the error? Well, I don't know if there's any specific error. I can't see one, but you might have made an error. That the proper response to that type of person is to just say, "Oh, I don't care. I'm ignoring you." Right? Come up with an actual counter argument. Point out where I have made an error in my derivation, in my argument here, and then we can go on from there. But you would be paralyzed. You can't do philosophy on this view that you have to be able to point to non-existence, because you can't point to non-existent. You can only point to things which exist. So that's the problem with this view, that, well, we can never be totally certain what our values are, but we can, right? The certainty doesn't mean that you have proven there are no errors. Certainty means that you have the evidence in your favor, that you've compiled all the evidence, you've considered all the relevant facts, and you've said, yeah, the evidence points in this way, that this is a value for them. That's what certainty means in this context.
That's good to know, because basically what I'm saying is sacrifice presupposes something that points to a greater cause in your favor, basically. But misinterpretations of religious texts over the years would suggest otherwise, just for the sake of it's just for the sake that they believe that, hey, if we because of the fact that they believe that teaching people about this certain thing will grant them the a higher cause, then they have to, basically, hold on, I'm tying my shoes.
No worries.
Yeah. So, to do anything at all, I would say presupposes like some sort of future good, and like even like the most simplest of things that provides like the most immediate satisfaction. Like, do I really know whether? Well, I mean, like I'm pretty sure that drinking one of these will provide me with satisfaction, but it's more so like it's something you see as very, very probable rather than absolute, It's just like you could think of it as like percentages in a way, but like not exactly precise percentages. It's more like basically, yeah. Uncertainty is like, yeah, okay. I'm starting to like put together some of the things you've been saying, and I do think like being certain about certain things isn't just like proving everything about it, and like everything that will happen afterwards as a result of it. Basically, like it's like the butterfly effect. I mean, it's fair to assume that it won't cause anything to kill a butterfly, but if you were to compare timelines to when the butterfly was killed and when it wasn't, it sort of ties into that basically. But I mean,
sure, yeah. So like the long and short of it would be that, well, it might be probable that arsenic is a disvalue, but what if you're wrong, right? There would have to be evidence in favor of the other way, or else it is certain, right? Because we don't live in this Humean universe of flux where anything can happen at any time. Things have definite natures, and we can discover these natures by looking out and investigating these things. So like yeah. So like just for something to be certain, it means that there is no evidence against it. You have plenty of evidence for it, but no evidence against it. So it's all about evidence. So you can have evidence for things being values, like, food. We have a bunch of evidence that food is necessary for life, because we see people starving all the time. There would need to be evidence of people who are living without food for us to doubt this. We don't just doubt it on its face.
Yeah. Hang on one sec. I'm just gonna talk this real quick, and then
Sure.
get another one.
So the plan is, for those in chat, I'm thinking of doing a Q&A after this. I'll ask him when he gets back, unless he's got Bluetooth headphones and then he can hear me right now. But yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, so he can hear me. So yeah, you okay with a Q&A then?
Yeah, I'd be totally down for that.
Cool. Do we have anything more to go into, do you reckon? Or could we do that now?
I'd be down to do that right now, because I feel like eventually we're just gonna go into like a circle, and I feel like getting a third party will help break it in a way. So, but if there's anything else I would like to say is that, I'm glad to be able to talk to you about this, and that and that I didn't let any of my personal problems get in the way of doing this debate with you. You are, I see you, like, I would say we disagree like on so many things, but I feel like this sort of debate has like kind of helped us, or at least it helped me like understand you better. I mean, I still hold firm into my positions, but like I feel like I know, like I've been watching you for quite a while, and I think you spread some wisdom, I would say.
Sure. Thank you very much for that.
Mm-hmm.
I think this has been a very respectful conversation, but yeah. So I'm just gonna go to the toilet real quick, and
Okay.
get into the general chat if you want to ask us questions, and I would ask you to go into the general so we can like talk in there, and I'll hop in there when I get back.
Hop in
Hop
there.
in there, yeah. And
Yeah.
for those on the stream, the link to the Discord is on the screen, and I'll copy that link. Let's see here. Invite people. Copy. Nope. Yep, that should be the link. Alright, I'm gonna go to the toilet. I'll be right back. Yeah,
it's still going.
do you want to go to the general VC then?
Sure.
All right, let's go.
Hello.
Right there.
Whoa. Oh wait, I just realized I had the here. I used the wrong mic the entire time. I wasn't. Oh no, I was.
That would be quite funny. So, like, I suppose I can start it off with August. So, yeah, the question at the end. So I'm gonna read that now. So, don't know who this to, so I guess I'll let you answer first. Is the captain of a sinking ship of downed aircraft? Is the captain of a sinking ship or downed aircraft who seeks the salvation of his crew and passengers before him an altruist? So he's looking to save his passengers and crew before himself. Does that make him an altruist? What'll be your view on that?
Oh! I'm sorry. The question was asked in your DMs. Is that what you? And it was like posted to me, or?
Well, it was just I don't know who it was posed to, but I'll let you answer first, then I can give my answer.
I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention. Was it like okay? Was it a guy? If a guy does it make it? Does it make the guy who saves his crew? Does that make him an altruist?
Yeah, because so like he's trying to save his crew before himself. Does that make him an altruist?
Right. Yeah, I would say that. I would say that would definitely be an altruistic act to save his crew over himself, simply because he values his crewmates in surviving more than himself.
I think I would agree with there. I think it is if you are, sacrificing yourself, if you are looking to save others. Maybe if you downed it by your negligence, then you kind of owe them. That would be a slightly different situation, I would think. But if you're just doing it because, you think they deserve life more than you, then that would be definitely altruist. That would be self-sacrifice. Does anybody in the VC have any questions? You can unmute.
I want to follow up on that if possible.
Sorry?
Do you mind if I follow up on that?
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
Go ahead.
What if the captain explains himself and says that I believe in creating a world for myself and for I believe in creating a world for myself where if you accept a duty voluntarily ahead of time, you should execute it fully. And so that's why when I accepted the responsibility of being the ship's captain, I accepted in advance that that I'm going to do this thing and without changing my mind. And I still believe in the same value, and it's my personal value. So it's not necessarily a self-sacrifice, but a world building. So for example, I would want to live in a world that if a building is on fire and there's a child in there, I'm going to run in and save the child. So that's my choice to establish such a world, even if that's the last thing that I will.
I have an answer to that. So basically, in that case, you're sacrificing the choice to reject doing that. So, it's rejecting the option to be able to not I guess sacrifice your life, basically, by like having this sort of contract, like, hey, I dedicate, I see this duty as like my own value. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's if you take on the role of like firefighter or whatever, and you think this is like this is like your great work, you love fighting fires and stuff like that, then yeah, you should follow through on your word. I think, or else you're just a coward essentially. I would say it's like I would say it's not altruism, unless it's based on the premise that they deserve life more than you. That's awful. So it's not altruism to save others or to help others, but it is altruism to help others at the expense of yourself because you don't deserve happiness or well-being.
Oh, see, I see altruism as just simply helping others, and I mean, basically, oh yeah. I know we've already like gone through this whole discussion, but
I'm trying to figure out if intent matters, because from Liquid Zulu's last answer, he first said the answer that, I mean, he alluded to intent in his initial answer, and then he said, well, if the intent is different, even though the action is exactly the same, but if it has the proper intent, then it's that he would consider it a non-altruist action. And
so,
with you, is the answer that like the intent doesn't matter?
Well, does the intent doesn't matter? Well, I suppose like the ultimate end is like you don't exactly know what the end is, but you feel confident in what the end that the end will provide satisfaction in some way or another. So I think there might be like a chart that like gives that signifies something that's like the opposite of basically. Actually, now that I think about it, I think it was completely wrong for me to say that altruism and selfishness needed to be like mutually excluding concepts. I actually think altruism is like actually like the gradient between selfishness and something else. I don't know what the correct word is. Excuse me.
I kind of want to clarify here, I think, because I don't think it's just. I think I maybe misworded there. I don't think it's just that you think that you intend to help yourself that it makes it good. I think it's more than that. I think it's if you have rationally determined that it's going to be a good thing for you, that this is something which will satisfy you. It's not just I have this random whim and I intend to follow through on it. It's so I suppose it's like a slight difference there.
Yeah, but I wouldn't say that's selfish just because it's in your self-interest. I just see, let's see. Yeah. I think, like I'm still. It's actually kind of funny how much I still like feel adamant in defending this whole concept of altruism, even though I feel like you and I are like a lot closer in like agreement on what is best for man to do at the end of the day. I think it's just ultimately the I feel like it sounds. I feel like to some people our conversation would sound like annoying, or at least maybe just the fact that I'm still thinking about it. Yeah,
I have another. If you guys are ready, I have another maybe clarifying hypothetical. I think this is like a better example. So I was trying to see whether I self-sacrifice at some points and where I have similar reason. So one thing that came to mind is why I pick up my own litter on the street. So technically, if I were to have a very short-term thinking, I would have no reason to pick up a piece of trash. I could like easily conclude that it would be brushed up by someone else, or like will eventually just get carried into the drain or whatever. Like I don't need to calculate. It takes extra effort to pick it up and put it in the trash. And the reason why I don't do that is because of a belief that if I don't do this, then other people playing the same sort of game theory scenario will also not do it. And therefore, there's going to be a lot more like chaos and trash in my environment, which is something that I personally don't prefer. So if I was like selfishly dumb, I would throw things, down on the floor all the time. But if I'm selfishly smart, I would think, there's this game theory thing that exists. Whereas an altruist idea would be, I must do it as a duty because I must sacrifice myself for others, roughly.
I would roughly agree with that, but I would say it's not. I think their property rights plays a greater role in this than you gave it credit for. Like, because I think that does apply to like, just like the barren wastes. If you don't want other people littering, do as you'd want others to do or whatever. But for property, I think it's bad. I think it's, unselfish to be destroying other people's property. So if there's a rule on some private property that, you shouldn't litter here, then that's bad. You're an enemy of reason there, I would say.
Yeah. So like assume like this assume like there's this private property that like people are allowed to come on it because it's like a business, and they want to be able to sell things, so people can come in like relatively freely, and so
hopefully they wipe it down afterwards.
Yeah.
Only people are to come all over it.
Yeah. Wait. Oh, you're distracting me. So I'm just trying to get back.
I'm sorry, the joke was just there. I had to take it.
Yeah, it's just my childish sense of humor is like completely derailing it. I just let it completely derail my thought. Man.
That it left for game theory exclusively. Maybe the owner is like just running an experiment at that time about game theory, and so the experiment will like last, I don't know, 10 years. That's what the property owner decided. Nobody knows about it, so it's totally legal to litter there, but it does cause the eventual accumulation of trash. So then the scenario, like privatize everything, doesn't have any impact on the scenario now. The only impact that there is whether you're calculating short term or long term. So the short term might be like not called proper selfish. It might be like in a category of just unreasonable period dumb.
Oh yeah.
Is there such a category? Like a third category?
The third category of I'm sorry, I was like not fully following along.
Right. So
I think if
we eliminate all property disputes. Sorry, go ahead.
So I think there are other categories than an action is altruist, an action is selfish. Like, because you could do something, let's say, not because it's in the benefit of others, and not because it's in the benefit of yourself. I think that is potentially, you could just have, like, you're on your own. There's nobody else on planet Earth. And you decide, I want to cut off all the skin on my arm because that will be destructive of me. Not because it will benefit anybody else, but just because it will be destructive of me, and I think that's a good thing. I think that would not be altruist, but it would be self-sacrifice. So I think you're correct that there is some third category.
Yeah. Okay. That was like sort of like the third category. I was actually sort of thinking about that. Like it's like, you know, there's self-sacrifice. I think the problem of how I approached our like sort of debate is that I thought for some I just had this honestly, it's kind of a ridiculous presumption that I thought like you thought altruism and self-sacrifice were just like fully synonymous with one another, but obviously that doesn't make any sense to like why I would think that, because I mean like sacrifice doesn't inherently mean that it's for like a person or something higher than a person. It can also just be sacrifice for the shits and giggles of it.
Yeah. So, like, yeah, I would say altruism is a subset of self-sacrifice, and selfishness is self-interest. So the negation of self-sacrifice.
Yeah. Right. So basically, I think my perception on the word of self-interest is basically I feel like selfishness and self-interest aren't synonymous terms. Rather, I would say, like, generally speaking, I would say the general perception of the word self-interest more so lies like a midpoint between selfishness and altruism, but like a more like sort of fully realized version of self-interest, I would say, leans more towards altruism, just simply upon the fact that we tend to engage in like seemingly arbitrary engagements between other humans, as opposed to just being isolated like as like a given or a concept. It's like, yeah, that's basically what I'm over to draw like a actually I think if there's any topic that the quote unquote horseshoe theory can be used, I would say it's like this topic, which sounds weird, I know, but I have like my whoops.
I have a follow-up in case nobody else.
Oh yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. I talk for like a long time, and like I like talk a lot. But I would say, yeah, you any of you just go ahead, ask it. Oh, actually, there's like a question that this guy asked, and I just spaced
the
off.
The token Jewish guy, Strat guy.
Yeah,
I'm not sure I understand that question. So, is anything outside of yourself altruistic? I'm not sure what's meant by outside yourself. It seems to be
say,
like the economic analysis that you were going for, which I just, just because you think it's in your self-interest doesn't mean it is. Or rather, just because you think that it's a better state of affairs, doesn't mean that it's in your self-interest. Because you might think something which you think is not in your self-interest is a better state of affairs, right?
Let's see here.
So I think this question is based on false premises.
But I would say, like, I do think I don't think my eyes are like going all over. I think I might have like dyslexia or something, because I've never been that good at reading stuff in general. Let's see. But before I fully comprehend this question, what I should have done, one set of terminology I should have included in my debate was like psychic income, because that was like something that like I like thought a lot about when it came to like Rothbard's Man, Economy, and State, was like, because it mentioned that on multiple occasions, if I recall correctly. Maybe I'm not confusing it with Human Action, am I? I'm not really sure. Actually, I need to hit the head real quick.
Oh.
I'll be 2 seconds.
All right. I suppose you want to ask your follow-up question, Casimir?
Yeah, I wrote it down, but I'll voice it. So it was aimed at Talon, but I guess you can answer that as well. Or does Talon agree with? Yeah, does Talon agree with the view that historically the word selfishness was deliberately demonized by proponents of altruism to confuse it with the meaning of short-sightedness and stupidity? So, like, they would give examples of selfishness, which, when just very basically rationally investigated, would be found out to be just like pure short-sightedness and stupidity, and not actual like wise selfishness, which is like game theory selfishness I mentioned before.
Yeah, I would agree that it's basically like a conflation tactic, right? And this is why Ayn Rand refused to move an inch from the word selfishness. Because, there are other words you could use. You could use plenty of other terms to designate the concept, and you wouldn't get all this hate. But she observed that the fundamental battle is that when you're acting in your own self-interest, people call you evil and selfish. The only way to win that battle is to take back the word selfish, to say, no, yes, indeed I am acting selfishly. That's a good thing. I should act selfishly. Your attack is meaningless. It does nothing. Go ahead, attack me, call me selfish. It only makes me stronger. So yes, I would agree there that like the enemies of man have been trying to conflate selfishness with evil, but I don't think this is like necessarily a strategic thing where they're like, oh, well, selfishness is actually good, so we'll try and conflate it with something bad. I think they genuinely think that selfishness is a bad thing, and that it's in the same category as these like short-sighted acts, as you termed it. I suppose Talon's back, so you can re-ask the question to this intended recipient.
Yeah, then I can repeat it. So, does Talon agree with this view that historically the word selfishness may have been deliberately demonized and misrepresented by proponents of sacrificial altruism to confuse it with the meaning that is actually just short-sightedness and stupidity?
So basically, the way I see the word selfishness is actually, I think selfishness in a way is more is like misunderstanding what your self-interest actually is. It's like for example, like valuing like a material good that doesn't really enhance your satisfaction as much as like a person would, like just doing something good for a person. It's like not selfishness is basically not properly recognizing what is actually good for you in a way, because like it's just like as a result of focusing on yourself too much and not referring that sort of information you have about yourself to other people, like what knowledge you have that has come from only your brain. That's like how we understand and become smarter, is like by relaying various statements to one another to sort of formulate like a cohesive sort of system and network in like our reasoning, basically, because it's like I don't really. I feel like the whole, like for example, like I feel like the whole multiple personality sort of concept is like, I feel like that's sort of misunderstood. Like, it's more like the way I understand it, like if like a person has like multiple personality disorder, it's not that there's like multiple people in his head, but rather they're all one, like they're just like it's, say for example, someone has like three personalities or like three people. What it actually is like one, each of them is like about like 1/3 of that person, right? Because I mean they all occupy the same brain at the end of the day. So it's just like so they all are like connected to like one central sort of network and function. But yeah, it's just such a out there. I have no idea how I digressed into that.
Wait, but maybe I can bring it back. So
yeah, you should bring it back.
I think it may be like just better language to admit that altruism involves, the extreme of it is basically self-sacrifice for others without consideration for yourself. And this is like a matter of intent, and a good, again, very common philosophical hypothetical for that is the famous prisoner's dilemma, if you remember it, that, both prisoners are doing a calculation, and that calculation could be, I should do selfishly what's best for myself, right? Or I should do what's best for game theory for myself, which is, I have... if the other prisoner is smart enough to know the prisoner's dilemma, then I shouldn't rat them out because by ratting them out, I'm precluding myself from going scot-free entirely. Whereas, but if somebody says, I'm going to sacrifice myself so that the other prisoner gets a lower sentence, that's clearly altruism. But if he says, I'm going to not rat them out, even though it is of immediate benefit, in order to have a chance for the greater felicity for all, as Bentham says, right? Then that's not actual altruism. That's just like a higher level, higher tier calculation.
Yeah. Well, I think altruism is about like higher tier calculation on like, and yeah.
Wait, but the self-sacrifice is not part of that higher tier calculation. There's no sacrifice whatsoever there.
Well,
he's not sacrificing himself if he's...
Let's see here.
Sorry, I'm wrong. He's sacrificing, but not for the other prisoner. He's sacrificing strictly for himself based on the calculus. It's a long-term win.
Sorry, I've just been like sort of like also daydreaming on like various other ways to explain my point of view. And so I think I think maybe just in general I'm difficult to talk to or something, because I'm just like in a million. Yeah. I think my ADHD is just like it sort of controls my life in a way. But what can you do?
I actually have an interesting question here from HR Recon Quest.
Oh yeah, let's hear it.
So, question: is selfishness human nature, or is altruism human nature, and people have to act against it to be selfish? What would be your take on that first?
Yeah, I would say altruism is human nature, and to be selfish is to act against it. So, I feel like oftentimes people misrepresent a lot of actions as being selfish when I don't think they actually are. And when people, it's just like, yeah, that's basically, I think making a lot of money, for example, people say that like people say that like making a lot of money is selfish when in reality making a lot of money is like can be for like, you know, for the benefit of others. Like starting a business, for example, is like you have to, in order for a business to survive, it has to be for like the benefit of others, because, you know, it makes those goods, it makes like goods cheaper, because just creating a business for whatever goods they intend to sell, like, because they ultimately transform the goods into being cheaper goods, basically. Because let's say, for example, you know, apples, just let's just go with an apple market. Instead of having to pick those apples, you know, from the tree, all you have to do is just instead of driving out in the forest and picking apples from the trees, you know, all you have to do is just drive into town and you know, pay a certain amount of money for those apples. And so you find it more time effective, basically. So basically you're of course it's not exactly altruistic to make a business, exactly, because, you know, you're ultimately doing it for more guaranteed ends, in a way, because, you know, you expect money from it. But like it's just like it doesn't fully exclude altruism, because they still have to go out of their way in order to be able to start it, because they believe that, hey, you know, well, basically what I'm saying is we don't pursue money for the sake of money. We pursue money like why start a business around you know, this very niche thing, for example, if this niche thing doesn't apply to all these people, but, you know, there's like a lot of niche things that, you know, businesses are started on, right? It's because they have like some sort of passion towards like that niche. Now I'm getting into the economic side, and I think I'm cutting into people's questions again, but that's like, yeah.
Sure. So, I suppose I would answer the question: is selfishness human nature, or is altruism human nature? And people have to act against it to be selfish. I would say neither. Neither is human nature. It's not the case that you are metaphysically determined to be selfish, or that you're metaphysically determined to be altruistic. Altruism or selfishness has to be chosen. It has to be chosen by man, because these two things, they operate on the conceptual level, and that's where reason comes into play. And you have a choice over how you operate your reason. So you aren't automatically selfish or altruistic. You have to choose this. You have to choose whether to think, whether to accurately integrate your sense data, or whether you are actively disintegrating that sense data, which would be the case for the altruists. Or you can drift and not integrate sense data at all. So yeah, that would be my answer to that question.
Honestly, I shouldn't have said that altruism is human nature. I should have just said that, like, human nature aims towards altruism, and that's why, but that's also why I say people misrepresent a lot of actions as being selfishness, like, or greedy. Like I don't, like, obviously I see politicians as like being more greedy than like just someone who has like a higher net worth than they do, mainly because of the lengths that they're willing to go through in order to obtain that money, because it's at the expense of others and their property rights. And so basically just the fact that like what do we ultimately gain by like spreading by like spreading ideas of, you know, being more enforcing of our property rights? Like what do we like um like is there really any direct gain from spreading these anarcho-capitalist ideas? Or
Yes, there is. I know for a fact that I would definitely be more successful on YouTube if I was a socialist. But I would hate myself. I would want to kill myself every single day. So it's definitely a benefit to me to spread truth, because I would hate it if, the Fountainhead, I'm reading that at the moment. This has a great personification of this. That, there are two people. There are Howard Rourke and there's Peter Keating. Howard Rourke is being a rational architect. He gets very little monetary success, at least in the beginning. But he's happy because he's making rational buildings. He's not making horrible buildings, which everybody else wants. He's making proper, rational buildings. Peter Keating, he's making these irrational buildings. These buildings are awful, but they're what everybody else wants. So Peter Keating, he hates himself. This drips out of the book to me. Peter Keating is horribly depressed. This isn't necessarily written in plain English. It doesn't say, and then Peter Keating was depressed. But he just, listening to what Peter Keating is saying, it drips out of his every word. He hates himself. He hates life. But Howard Rourke, who is working out of a super fucking dingy office and has basically no money to his name, he loves life. He loves what he's doing. So I would say that's basically what I'm doing. I'm making less monetary success, but I love it. I love what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I would hate to betray the values that I think are correct. I would hate to be spreading untruth. That's basically my response there.
Right on. Yeah, and you know what? I actually see that as like I see that as altruistic, because, you know, you're trading off like something that would like, yeah, because so basically I think what distinguishes our perceptions of the word altruism is that you see it as like something utilitarian. When I see it like I don't think that it's altruistic to just throw money like on the ground or something, hoping that like a homeless guy will come pick it up like on the middle of a public sidewalk or something. Basically, the best way to be altruistic is to show selflessness to those who matter to you the most, basically, because it's not just about like giving up. It's not just about giving up goods. I mean, I think like, hang on, I just got a message. I'll be right back.
All right. I mean, do we have any other questions?
What's that? Come on.
Sure. So, I mean, what you were saying there is, I'm totally blanking on what it was that I was going to say. Could you like repeat what you were saying in like short form to jog my memory? I guess not.
Wait. Wait, were you talking to me?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. What was that?
So yeah, no, I just forgot what you were saying there. I just want to jog my memory.
Right. Yeah, I forgot what I was saying as well.
Right, well,
Let's see here. Hmm. Let's see here. But there's some that don't cast pearls before swine. Nice.
oh no, I remembered it. You were talking about how altruism, on your view, isn't sacrificing for just any old person. It's sacrificing for those who you care about most, right? But
yeah, not just. I mean, not just caring about not just those who you care about the most, but rather people you have some level of connection to. Because I mean, I for example, there was this homeless guy on the sidewalk, and he was holding a sign or something, so I handed something to him. I mean, you could argue that I had no connection to him, but I mean, he was in my town, and so I have there's some level, there's some thread between him and I, basically. And so
sure, but I suppose the question here is why sacrifice for those who are most important to you? I think this would be because those who are most important to you are those who have the most immediate impact in your life. So it's those who potentially are going to be benefiting your life if you give up something to them. So it's not really the altruist premise of sacrifice for sacrifice's sake. It's not sacrifice because you don't deserve those things that you produced. It's sacrifice. It's not really a sacrifice in the Randian understanding. It's giving something up to someone else because you expect to get something better in return. That's not really a sacrifice to Rand there. And that's what I think this is based on. This sacrifice for those who are more important to you than those who aren't.
Right. Let's see. Yeah, no, I don't think it's. Yeah, no, I think when it comes, I think let's see. I'm just yeah, I would say altruism at the end of the day kind of rides a fine line between self-interest and self-sacrifice rather than it inherently being full on sacrifice. There's a level of coordination, basically. And I mean, obviously it kind of makes it less, it can potentially make it less altruistic, the closer the person can be, but rather, just it ultimately has to have some level of, rationale that you could easily distinguish, and it's just not throwing out. Yeah, like I said, I wouldn't consider throwing out money, hoping that being very uncertain that it will actually benefit anyone. Just throwing out money, hoping that someone is going to pick it up or something. It's just that's not altruism if you're yeah.
Sure. So unless anybody else in the VC or whatever has a burning question.
Sorry, I did it again.
I think we can probably end it there. Does anybody else have anything? Well, I guess not. So that, I suppose, wraps up our altruism debate. I will continue to be in the VC after this stream if you just want to chat. But yeah, thank you for coming on. I think it was a good discussion.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for coming. And that is us ending now. Boop.
All right.
All right. Cool. Yeah. So that's oh, I've got to fucking verify my Google account, but I'm just going to take a piss. I'll be back in a bit.
Oh, okay. Sounds good.